Welcome to Cozy Noah Vibes, where we listen, relax, and get sleepy. My name's Noah, and it's such a pleasure to be your host. Thanks for joining us. Abby will be reading this evening's story, where we have the first installment of a series about a woman named Emma, who is fulfilling a lifelong dream of researching the lighthouses on the rugged coast of Maine in the northeastern United States. These stories will be a blend of travel and history that I know you're going to love. We'll be releasing a few of them over the coming months. Tonight, she'll visit the state's oldest lighthouse, which dates back to the dawn of the U.S. In doing so, she'll discover that the true beauty of a lighthouse lies not just in its welcoming flash, but also in the steadfast devotion of its many keepers. So, let's take a little time now to settle in and transition towards a state of deep relaxation and sleepiness. I know it can be difficult to switch off the businessins in your mind or to let go of excess energy lingering in the body, but that's exactly why Cozy Noah Vibes is here. Close your eyes and take a nice deep breath, feeling your body relax and sink into bed as you exhale. If you notice any thoughts drifting around in your mind, then just begin to imagine them as clouds floating in the sky. Separate yourself from the sense of your thoughts being you, and realize that you are simply the observer. Just like how you might lay on a field of soft grass and watch the clouds float by, you can allow your thoughts to be detached and just let them come and go across the blue sky. If your mind is particularly noisy tonight, the sky might be pretty full of clouds, but inevitably the breeze will still carry those clouds away. You just lay back and observe, and as they clear, you become connected with the glow of the sun, a glow that envelops you both externally and internally, bringing warmth, reassurance, and the chance to rest. So now, let's head to the rocky shores along the coast of Maine. It's summer, and the cool sunny weather makes it the perfect time to be visiting. Emma couldn't have asked for a more glorious first morning on the coast of Maine. To be fair, late summer was considered by many to be Maine's most beautiful season. At a time of year when other states were sweltering under the most oppressive heat of the summer, the weather in the far northeast flirted with perfection, especially on the breezy southern coast of the state. The average temperatures tended to be quite pleasant, with plenty of sunshine and low humidity. Sure, there were days that got hotter, but this was not one of those days. Today, Emma would enjoy perfect temperatures, sparkling sunshine, and refreshing breezes for her very first journey to one of the country's most famous lighthouses. Arriving just last evening after a long drive from Boston, Emma had spent the night at a modest bed and breakfast in a leafy suburb of Portland, Maine. The home dated to the 19th century and was built in the stately Victorian style, with the gracious porch and formal interior. The rooms inside were resplendent with dark woodwork and tall ceilings. Her own bedroom was not large, but it was outfitted with handsome wood furniture and the typically elegant white bedspread. Her windows overlooked the quiet tree-lined street below. A continental breakfast was served in the wood-paneled dining room in the morning, while she was enjoying more freshly baked muffins with fresh local blueberries. Her hostess had asked after her plans for the day, Upon hearing of Emma's trip to Portland Head Light, she had certainly approved, in her capacity as hostess. However, she had followed with her own advice. First, Emma must make time at the end of her visit to explore nearby Fort Williams Park. It was the site of several ecological restoration projects, and she said it was also the best way to get a sweeping view of the lighthouse from afar. From there, a visitor on a clear day like this one could also spot for other nearby lights. Second, she absolutely must have a lobster roll from the food truck there, which was quite well known. Emma could make no argument with this advice, since she was planning to eat as much lobster as possible during this trip. Still, lunch seemed very far away. She savored the last few bites of sweet, crumbly muffin and drank her freshly squeezed orange juice. Emma was looking forward to taking it slow today and enjoying every moment. After all, this was a long-anticipated trip. Emma wasn't just a tourist. She was taking a sabbatical from her work as a history professor in order to gather research material for a book. Ever since she was a child, she had been fascinated by lighthouses. It wasn't just the structures themselves that held historical significance. Each site was completely unique in many ways. Certainly, lighthouses had their own architectural details, but their position on the shore and the human stories that surrounded them were just as interesting. These intriguing beacons appear to play a dramatic role in the lives of so many people, ranging from their faithful keepers to the intrepid mariners who depended upon them for navigation. Each lighthouse had its own tale to tell, and what better place to indulge her love for lighthouses? The state of Maine was blessed with at least 60 historic examples of them. She wouldn't have the time or resources to see all of them, but she had chosen a few of the most interesting ones to start with. The Portland Head Light was not the tallest lighthouse in Maine. That honor was currently held by Boone Island Light, which stood 133 feet tall. It certainly wasn't the shortest lighthouse either. Nearby Portland Breakwater Light, affectionately Big Leg Light, stood a mere 19.5 feet, like a petite, lacy white wedding cake. Portland Head Light was, however, the oldest and most photographed lighthouse in the entire state of Maine. That made it an excellent place to begin. From a historical perspective, the Portland Head Light held the distinction of having been the first lighthouse commissioned by George Washington under the Lighthouse Act of 1789, which had transferred the construction and care of all American lighthouses to the federal government. With a tight budget in mind, he told the two local architects on the project to use rubble stone that could be easily hauled by oxen. With her delicious breakfast as fortification, Emma left the bed and breakfast behind for the day and headed out on her small quest. As she drove the short distance to the lighthouse, she smiled to think that rubble stone should hold up so marvelously well for such a long time. One of the charms of this particular lighthouse was the fact that it had never yet been rebuilt, although it had seen many alterations over the years, and like other similarly historic beacons, it was still standing in what was essentially its original form, with a tall, white conical tower and a keeper's house below. As she drove through neighboring Fort Williams Park and approached the sweeping view of Portland Head, Emma had the odd feeling of entering a postcard. She had seen so very many pictures of this incredible place, and the view today was even better than she had imagined it would be. Upon entering the circular lot in front of the lighthouse, it was the keeper's house that first greeted her, nestled at the foot of the tower. As she surveyed the parking, she was grateful for her early start to the day. Finding a spot was easy. Emerging into the bracing sea air, she locked up the car and walked down the wide path to the charming red-roofed keeper's house. Now that the lighthouse was largely automated, this part served as the museum. The porch had arched eaves along the front that gave it a personable and welcoming appearance, with stunning scenery unfolding to her left and right. However, she lingered outside for a while to take in the view. Although she knew that the tower itself was not generally open to the public, Emma was eager to make her way around every inch of the exterior and see the structure from all sides. Proceeding past the museum, she came around the south side of the lighthouse. The wind was a bit stronger up here at the Portland Head, and it blew her hair back with refreshing corners. Walking to the fence at the edge of the property, she looked down. The waves crashed on the gray rocks below, sending frothy white spray high into the air. Emma was mesmerized by the motion of the water and closed her eyes, lulled by the oddly peaceful sound of the active surf. She had seen the famous Edward Hopper painting of this beautiful sight. Emma had stood before it in a Boston museum, taking in the smooth lines and slightly softened aspect it gave the landscape. The water beyond the lighthouse in the Hopper painting was completely tranquil, creating a very peaceful mood. Now, looking at the gently rolling ocean and the rugged slope before her, she felt like she was in an entirely different place. The sea was much more dynamic than she had realized, and each rock and blade of grass popped with a color she hadn't expected based on Hopper's painting. She felt totally invigorated by this lived version of a lighthouse she'd previously only seen as a static image. Turning to her left, she shielded her eyes from the cheerful morning sun and viewed the tower from below. Based on what she had read, it now stood 80 feet tall, but that had not always been true. With an almost comical history of its own, the tower had been short, then tall, and then smaller again over the years. The original plan had been to make it only 58 feet tall. Apparently, a subsequent order that it be increased to 70 feet caused one of the architects to quit. The other had stayed, completing the work within 2 years, and the Portland Head Beacon had first shown in January 1791. Its old way-loyal lamp had not been very bright, but this humble lighthouse had served its purpose for mariners along the Portland coastline. Emma made her way along the fence, taking in the view from all sides. For over 200 years, Portland Head Light had stood guard, providing steady guidance and safe harbor to countless ships. Although it was now fully automated and controlled by a modern light station, it had once been a more traditional lighthouse that required its keepers to live in the house below. Her mind turned to those people, as she always did when thinking about these places. How had they managed to keep a family going in such isolation? The life of a keeper's was by no means an easy one, and she wondered if she would have been strong enough to manage it. All of her research into the keepers of various lighthouses told her that it took a very special kind of person to succeed in the role. No matter the weather, they had to be vigilant, ready to assist mariners in distress, and maintain the light's operation without interruption. They had to be prepared to survive harsh winters, relentless storms, and the deep loneliness that often came with the job. As she walked along, her thoughts were interrupted by the cry of seagulls overhead. A group of them circled above the lighthouse, their calls adding to the natural symphony of the ocean waves crashing below. Emma stopped to watch them, captivated by their graceful flight. They seemed to be playing in the wind, gliding effortlessly through the air. For a moment, she imagined what it might be like to soar above the lighthouse and the rocky coast, taking in the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. With a contented sigh, Emma continued her exploration, eventually making her way to the museum. Inside, she was greeted by a friendly docent who offered to guide her through the exhibits. She accepted, eager to learn more about the history of Portland Head Light and the people who had kept its beacon shining over the years. The museum was a treasure trove of artifacts, photographs, and documents that painted a vivid picture of the lighthouse's past. Emma was particularly fascinated by the stories of the keepers and their families. The docent shared tales of bravery, hardship, and dedication that left Emma with a profound sense of respect for those who tended the light. One story, in particular, stood out to her. It was about a keeper named James, who had served at Portland Head Light during the late 19th century. James was known for his unwavering commitment to the lighthouses, often going above and beyond his duties to ensure the safety of passing ships. During a fierce winter storm, he had risked his life to rescue the crew of a ship that had run aground on the treacherous rocks. Despite the freezing temperatures and howling winds, James had managed to save every member of the crew, earning him a commendation for his bravery. As Emma listened to the docent's recounting of James' heroism, she felt a deep connection to the history of the lighthouses. These were not just stories from the past. They were the lives of real people who had dedicated themselves to a noble cause. The keepers of Portland Head Light had not only maintained the beacon, but had also become beacons of hope and safety for countless mariners. After exploring the museum, Emma took a moment to sit on a bench outside the keeper's house. The sun was beginning to climb higher in the sky, and the warmth felt comforting against her skin. She reflected on the story she had heard and the history she had learned. This was just the beginning of her journey, and she knew there were many more lighthouses to visit and stories to uncover. With a renewed sense of purpose, Emma rose from the bench and made her way to the nearby food truck. It was time to read her hostess's advice and indulge in a lobster roll. The line was already forming, a testament to the truck's popularity. As she waited, she struck up a conversation with a local who shared more insights about the area and its rich maritime history. When it was finally her turn, Emma ordered a lobster roll and found a picnic table with a view of the lighthouses. As she savored each bite of the succulent lobster, she felt a deep sense of contentment. This was more than just a research trip. It was a journey of discovery and connection. She was not only uncovering the history of Maine's lighthouses, but also forging her own personal connection to these timeless beacons of light. As the day drew to a close and the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the rocky coast, Emma knew that this was just the beginning of her adventure. There were many more lighthouses to visit, each with its own unique story to tell. She felt grateful for the opportunity to explore this beautiful corner of the world and to delve into the rich history of its lighthouses. And with a heart full of anticipation, she looked forward to the many discoveries that lay ahead. Thank you, Abby, for taking us on this delightful journey to the Portland Head Light. We're so glad you joined us tonight. Don't forget to join us next time, where we'll follow Emma to the next lighthouses on her journey. Until then, sweet dreams.